Hi, welcome to the 700 Club. It is fearfully plausible that America could go to war with China over Taiwan. That is according to a former Defense Department official.
Taiwan is now threatening to respond with military force if China's armed forces breach its territorial waters or airspace. George Thomas explains the grave danger behind these soaring tensions.
China expert Gordon Chang claims Beijing is gearing up for war.
A Chinese entrepreneur, factory owner, a few weeks ago told me that local cadres, officials, came up to him and said he's no longer producing medical equipment for civilians. His factory is going to be converted to war production. And this was not just an isolated case.
Elbridge Colby, a former top Defense Department official, warns America should prepare for war with China over Taiwan, warning that a conflict has gone from a remote scenario to a fearfully plausible one. Gordon Chang says Beijing is already making preparations.
The Chinese Communist Party is trying to sanctions-proof itself. So, for instance, it has told its officials to sell their foreign assets so they can't be taken away by foreign governments if they wanted to impose costs on China for invasion.
This as tensions continue to soar in the Taiwan Strait. On Tuesday, for the first time, Taiwan fired at Chinese drones buzzing the Kinmen Island just miles from China's coastline, vowing further counterattacks if Chinese provocations continue.
We will assess threat level and determine whether to engage the targets and exercise the rights of self-defense.
And that includes Taiwan pumping more money into its defense budget. That's already a record $19 billion this year. While Beijing continues to claim sovereignty over the island, Taiwan's president, visiting a military base near China's coastline this week, urged soldiers to keep their cool in the face of growing threats.
I want to tell you that the more provocative the enemy is, the more calm we need to be. We won't allow those on the opposing banks to manufacture a conflict with an inappropriate excuse.
China has kept up this military pressure since Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei early this month, with almost daily warplane flights and warship maneuvers in the Taiwan Strait.
They are practicing for war. And we saw that with the live fire exclusion zones, which were imposed after Speaker Pelosi's visit. God knows what they have up their sleeve in Beijing.
Taiwan's military, by the way, said it shot down a drone today that was buzzing over the same area where the Chinese drones were flying earlier in the week. Meanwhile, with the growing fears that China is preparing to take Taiwan by military force, the Biden administration is reportedly planning to ask Congress to approve more than $1 billion in arms sales to Taiwan, including anti-tank missiles, surveillance radar technology, and tactical air-to-air missiles. Andrew?
George, what's your take? I think Americans want to know, would the U.S. really enter into a military conflict with China over Taiwan? And secondly, are we obligated in some way to do so?
Well, let me answer the second question. Yes, we are obligated. Why? Because under the Taiwan Relations Act, which was signed, Andrew, 43 years ago, it says that while the U.S. will not militarily intervene should China, for example, invade Taiwan, instead the U.S. has a commitment, has an obligation to make available what they say such defense articles and defense services to Taiwan, in essence, to allow them to defend their island nation. But what is more important in light of the escalating tensions in the Taiwan Strait, in a couple of days, the Senate Relations Committee is going to bring up some very, very important legislation that would, in essence, upgrade the the thing that was signed 43 years ago, to upgrade it and, in essence, be more specific, Andrew, that would commit some very serious military hardware to the Taiwanese to protect themselves. Again, just another indication of the challenges that we are facing.
Yeah, and just shifting the focus a little bit here, the UN Human Rights Commission released a report detailing really serious human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims. How serious are these violations they found?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, in essence, echoes, it corroborates what human rights groups have been talking about, Andrew, for several years. And the fact that the world's largest human rights body has come out, in essence, corroborating what the evidence has shown over the last few years. And that evidence is that China has been committing war crimes against humanity, rather against the so-called Uyghur Muslims and other ethnic minorities. The key question now is that now that the UN has released this very important document, what will the other UN bodies, the other countries that are signatories to the United Nations, what will they do? And that is what everybody and the United Nations, as well as the human rights groups, are looking forward to.
All right, George, certainly appreciate your reporting. Thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome.
In other news, the water crisis in Jackson, Mississippi is entering its third day. Ephraim Graham has that story and much more from the CBN Newsroom. Ephraim?
Andrew, more than 150,000 people are still without clean drinking water after a pump failure at the city's main treatment plant.
We can't drink it, we can't cook in it, and I'm scared to bathe in it.
Thousands of residents are waiting in lines for bottled water. Schools are closed, with students now in virtual learning. And hotels and restaurants are seeing a deep decline in business. The city installed a new pump, but restoring full water pressure is slow going. The mayor is optimistic service will be restored within the week. The FDA granted emergency authorization for the next round of COVID booster shots. They're aimed at protecting against the BA4 and BA5 subvariants of the Omicron strain, which make up 99% of all new cases. The FDA not waiting for clinical trials on the booster, citing confidence in previous mRNA vaccines. They're hoping the shots will last through the winter.
Here is not to have to give lots of vaccines each year. It's hopefully to have this be the vaccine that holds us for as much of this or for the entire season if it can.
The Pfizer shots are authorized for those 12 and older. Moderna for those 18 and older. If the CDC gives its approval, the shot should be available after Labor Day. The Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade is still having ripple effects across America. Some pro-life supporters see needs to fill when it comes to supporting families. Members of Congress are working on a plan they believe would do just that, but it could be a tough sell to conservatives. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka explains.
The initial reaction to the Supreme Court decision returning abortion to the states was that it would mean momentum for stronger pro-life legislation. It's also served as a catalyst for an idea not necessarily embraced by some conservatives. While the reversal of Roe v. Wade was seen as an obvious win for pro-lifers, it also meant the beginning of another battle. It resulted in a flurry of activity from House Democrats, passing mostly symbolic bills that are stalled in the Senate to codify abortion into federal law.
Democrats are putting people over politics. We are ferociously defending the right to make decisions about women's health.
Some Republicans argue it's time for more family support. Utah Senator Mitt Romney put out his Family Security Act 2.0 plan over the summer. It's meant to ease economic hardships on families. Finances are often the #1 reason cited by women seeking an abortion. Romney has tried to thread the needle between support and what could be perceived as welfare in the bill.
I'd like people, a young woman that's not working and is pregnant, I'd like her to know that she doesn't have to eliminate the pregnancy to be able to carry the financial burden of a child. But I understand that we don't want to create any potential incentive for people to become entirely dependent upon government.
For more than a decade, economist Abby McCloskey has advocated for a greater government response to the struggles families and single mothers face.
There has been hesitation, I think, on the part of conservatives to rally behind these policies to the extent they're seen as a new entitlement or new spending and new federal overreach. And, you know, as a conservative, those concerns are ones I take seriously as well. That said, I think the purpose of government, even for the most conservative of us, is to provide a safety net for vulnerable people.
Romney's plan has also earned some support from major pro-life advocates, including the National Right to Life Committee.
The practical effect, of course, is going to help families with young children, but also hopefully it is going to help to make women realize that children are a blessing, and ending the life of that child is not going to improve their life.
Now, Romney's plan isn't the only GOP effort here. Florida Senator Marco Rubio has sponsored a plan that also includes a tax credit, plus expands in areas like paid leave, adoption, and crisis pregnancy centers. You can read more about both plans on CBNNews.com. Matt Gelke, CBN News.
The need even more critical as we see everything rising in cost. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for your report. And as you heard in his story, economic challenges are a primary reason a lot of mothers give for wanting to terminate the pregnancy. And maybe as a result of this initiative, many lives will be saved. Want to let you know also, for those of you who have called and written us to check on Gordon, thank you for your concern and care for him. He'll be back next week. Just want to let you know he had taken some time off. We had told you this a few times over the course of these weeks. He has been out, but he is doing well. He'll be with us next week, and he is doing just fine. So thanks for your calls.